Hello everybody, it's Paul. We have the honor today of being able to sit with David Grissom. You've come all the way from Austin, Texas, to be here with us in Maryland today. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've been doing this a long time, David. How long have you been playing PRS guitars? How long has this been?
I had to use a fake ID the first time I bought one. I think.
Seriously?
No, I don't think you have to. It's not like guns, even in Texas. I have. I'm coming into year 34.
Year 34.
So I bought my first one in '85 when they first came out.
Yeah. So my memory is that I ran into you at a trade show in Dallas, and you started playing, and I went, "Boy, you sound just like a guy in DC, except you're better." And I was talking about Michael Alt. And I love.
I might debate the better part.
Yeah, that's fine, but it doesn't really matter. There was something wonderful about it, and I didn't know about Joe Ely, and I didn't know about all that stuff that was going on at the time. But I loved the way you played, and you had that green seafoam green thing at the time, right?
Yep.
So this video today, the one we're in the middle right now, is about your DGT guitar, and I wanted to make a few statements about it, and then I want to ask you about it, because this thing has been in constant, I don't know, we've been baby tweaking it over and over and over and over and over again.
That's what we've been doing since 1985.
Yeah, right.
Every guitar that I've gotten, we've baby tweaked and talked tone and made adjustments, and you'd send me pickups and I'd throw them in, and I like this one, I don't like that one. I mean, it's been a constant ongoing.
So why don't you just tell the story about the pickups with you and Ed? Why don't you just tell that story, because that's a beautiful story about how these pickups came to be.
So I have a 59 335 that I love the sound of the pickups in, and I wanted to get that quality into these pickups. So Ed Reynolds, the mad scientist in Austin,
he's a guitar repairman, a really good one.
He's brilliant. He made a test guitar where we could mount all these different pickups on jigs, he calls them.
Yeah.
And they literally would slide into the top of the guitar, and you'd use alligator clips so it took 15 seconds to change a set of pickups.
So your memory wasn't strained.
Your memory, yeah. I mean, my past experience has been the hour that it took to unscrew, desolder, put the next ones back, and you've really forgotten.
Yeah.
And you could, so we were able to go, put a set in. I like this about that. Well, let's put this one in, and then we had a baseline too. By using, we got a lot of pickups from other manufacturers,
That's
and
right.
so we were seeing, well, where do these pickups fall within those pickups, and then I would bring the 335 in, and I didn't want it to be a 335 or sound exactly like that, but I wanted it to have the quality of it. When you get the upper harmonic, to rise up out of the note, and a certain amount of clarity without being harsh.
Right.
So I think you built us 40 or 50 sets of pickups.
We did.
And we would, we'd go through 10 sets, and I would call and say, hey man, that one with the A4 bar magnet or whatever it was, can you put 100 more turns on that?
Or actually, we got down to 25 turns.
I was hearing all this stuff, and so that was, it took about a year, a year to get to that point.
So here's the positive side. Not one of the Nashville guitar players that has one of your guitars, bought one of your guitars, ever says anything other than it's part of my arsenal and it sounds wonderful and I use it all the time. And the problem with this marketplace in general is that people get a little bored. Well, that's what you did for me last month. What do you got to do for me this month? But this tool just keeps working over and over and over and over again, and I'm really proud of that, and I know that you're really proud of that. One of the things that is not well known is when David comes and does a clinic for us, he doesn't bring a guitar. He holds my hands to the fire that he has to take the one off the wall and it has to be up to snuff to do the clinic, which I admire that about you, David. I think that that's really cool. And so it's the same thing if you're buying a DGT. If it's off the wall, it's something he's approved. And very, very often with artists, they have the super tweaked one of their model, but what's on the wall doesn't compare, and you're insisting always that what's on the wall compares, and I like that part.
It's called keeping them honest or something like that.
Something like that. Well, Carlos does the same thing. He'll take a guitar right out of the factory, put it in the back of the car, take it out, and go on stage with it.
Yeah.
And he wants the same exact thing.
Yeah. The only problem with this whole thing is about 50% of the time I want to take that guitar home with me.
And I offer it to you every time.
Well, you're not there every time, and so I can't. The dealers aren't going to let me walk out with their guitar. But we usually end up selling the one that I played.
Yeah, well, and people want you to sign it, and that's all really cool. So,
Can I just say one thing?
I'm sorry. There's so many stories.
Because we kind of jumped ahead from when we first met.
Yeah.
We did meet at a Dallas guitar show,
I remember.
and
I remember vividly.
I would have been 26, I think then.
Yeah.
And you said I'd like to give you a guitar and provide you with any parts that you need.
Yeah.
I'd like to establish a relationship that way.
Yeah.
And at that time, I mean, my first one I bought, I didn't have, he wanted, it was $1,000 with the case. I didn't have $1,000. I had a 59 Esquire stock.
Yeah.
And to get the guitar out the door, I had to give him the 59 Esquire, and he gave me the guitar, but he wouldn't let me have the case.
Yeah.
So
at the time,
things were different.
Cases were sold separately at the time.
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons I decided we always give a case away with the guitar.
So, nobody had ever given me a guitar before, and I can remember the anticipation. I was in my apartment. I'd just gotten married not too long ago, and we'd moved from a one-bedroom to a two-bedroom in the same complex. I can remember what it looked like. I can remember the excitement of that day waiting for the guitar to show up, and I can remember the sound of the UPS truck stopping in front of our building, our apartment building, and the doors sliding open, and the feeling of him handing me that box at the door. I can remember that like it was yesterday. And it was a really amazing thing. Now, I took it out to Joe Ely's, and we were making a record, and I recorded with it. And this is my baby. I mean, like, this is unbelievable. And so we set it on a stand at the end of the day, and I came back the next day, and Joe comes out, and Joe's always playing jokes on people, and he goes, and he had this really worried look on his face, like,
oh, no.
Your guitar. And I'm like, what? And he goes, they were taking a window unit air conditioner out, and fire ants had gotten all into, fire ants are attracted to the coolant in the AC units, and when they pulled the air conditioner out, fire ants went over all their arms and bit them all at the same time, and they dropped the air conditioner on my guitar.
That's a really well thought out mean.
It broke the headstock on my guitar, which I was like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, when I looked at it, I was like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
So it turned out that I learned the headstock repairs are not the end of the world, because it took, it was a badge of honor and a great story that fire ants broke my headstock.
This was not a joke. This really happened.
This happened.
Oh, shit.
This happened. And so we took it to the local guy. He glued it back up, and okay, here I'm off. I'm like, oh, shit, my guitar. So then 3 or 4 years later, or many years, about 5 years later, I did a few dates with James McMurtry after when I was with Mellencamp. I did that first record with him, and we did a gig in L.A., and I remember like the sort of pseudo managerial apprentice decided he was going to be roadie, and I remember him walking down the concrete ramp with my guitars and watching the gold top just fall off the guitar stand face first and hit the concrete. It broke again, and so we had to have it glued together back there in L.A. This is well, that guitar, it sounded better after it got glued back. It sounded better after it got glued back together. Maybe it's something with that hammer thing you do now. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Anyway, so that became that was my warhorse throughout the whole Mellencamp era and everything, and it survived all that, and I still have it.
So why don't you play this guitar just for a minute for everybody? Because this guitar is the first time you've touched this one, right?
This is the first,
So
yeah.
same thing. Hold my hands to the fire, and does it get your tone? And you know.
Yeah. But you told me to play really quiet.
That's okay.
So.
I'm fine. Go. You know what's interesting about it? What's interesting about it to me, David? There's a high-end note way up on the top.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful high mid-range and a mid-range, and then you don't have a whole bunch of low mids, and then there's bass note.
The goal for me has always been to get tight bottom end
Right.
and creamy top.
Right.
And with just enough mid-range to push the note out without clouding it up. Like an overwound pickup, the mid-range that you hear in a pickup that has too many windings, it's like this.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go over some other things that you are deeply insistent on this. So the neck shape, you should talk about that for a minute because you have been crystal clear about exactly what neck shape this has. This is a neck shape that's not on any of our other guitars.
Right.
And so where did all that come from?
It came from we measured the 87 gold top,
Yeah.
and then we measured the McCarty, the 93 McCarty that I used forever.
Yeah.
And we discovered that each of them had a similar anomaly where there was like a spot down here where there was a little less wood. Mm-hmm. And so we interpolated between those two guitars, which are my favorite necks. Ultimately, it comes down to playability. You know, can I play the way I play? It's a balance between having enough wood where my hand is supported and that's going to push the tone out there. Mm-hmm. But I don't buy into the whole bigger is better thing. I mean, up to a point, you can get a neck too small and the guitar is dead. Yeah. But for me, it has to be playable up here. It has to just feel right. And ultimately, you know, again, I go back to that 59 335. The neck on that thing is just perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. And it's not like every other 59 335. But then again, my 54 Strat, my 52 Tele also have what I call perfect necks, and they're not the same shape. So it doesn't it's not a one size fits all thing for me. It's just that when they get to a certain width or depth, they become unplayable. I lose the nuance. So,
are you happy with this neck shape as it sits?
This is my neck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm very happy with the neck shape. And so, combined with that, I expect, and I know you love me for this, but so the width of this fingerboard is slightly narrower than some of your other guitars. Mm-hmm. Because it's, again, for me personally, and I don't have small hands, but I need to be able to fret with my thumb and get up. I got to be able to get around and do everything I do up here. So when you ever so slightly have a little narrower fingerboard, what we have spec'd out is the angle of the way the frets are finished. So if they go down too much of a slant, you lose that real estate. And this way, I am able to have the neck width I want and not have the string fall off the edge of the fretboard. And it's again a balance. I mean, so much of this is about finding a balance of not feeling like you're hitting railroad tracks when you're going up and down the fingerboard.
I call it railroad tracky. I don't like it.
Yeah. And that's not what this is, but it's different. This guitar has a particular spec, and I'm sure the fret guys really are happy about this.
No, actually, the people here, it's doing it to your spec or doing it to the other spec. It's not a difficulty issue. It's just that it's got to be done the way you want it to be done. Look, this description of the guitar is just going to go over and over and over again about how groundedly nitpicky you are about this. So let's stop with that for just a sec. Tell a story about why you're playing a PRS and not a different brand. Remember the one you remember that story? This is a great story. Come on, just tell the story.
Well, I've told it so many times, but I'll tell it again. Right, when I got to Austin, I had one guitar. I had a 1960 Stratocaster Fiesta Red that I bought in Memphis for $400.
That ain't gonna happen again.
I still have it.
Yeah.
I tried to sell it a couple times. My wife wouldn't let me sell it. So she reminds me of that a lot. So like everybody in Austin played a Strat. Almost every guitar player. And there were so many unbelievably great guitar players in Austin at that time. There still are. But it just was like the concentration, the percentage of guitar players. You could go out every night and I'm like, that guy's incredible. And, they all had their own unique thing. And it was a Fender town. And I was at a party. This is back when I was out every night. I was playing with Lou Ann Barton, so I could go to Antone's for free every night. And I kind of went there every night for free. And there was always a party afterwards. It's 3:30 in the morning, and I'm out in the back of somebody's yard, and, the cops, and there are no cops in Austin, just like anything went back then. And there was a guy in town who was kind of a mover and shaker in the sort of management. He just was always around. He's a great guy, really great guy named Wade Nagel. And he's still a close friend. And somebody introduced me to him the first time we met, and he goes, "Oh, you're new to town," and he has this voice like this, and I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, what kind of guitar do you play?" I said, "Well, I got a Strat," and he goes, "Well, that's good, because if you don't play a Strat, you ain't shit." And I kind of thought about that for a second, and I literally woke up the next morning, and my first thought was, I got to get a different guitar. That's the way my mind works. Is like it's almost like a challenge. Like if I have to be like, if you're not like all these other guys, you're not in the game. And so, I opened up Guitar Player magazine and I see that Seafoam PRS.
Yeah, it was called a PRS. It wasn't even the standard.
It wasn't even the standard yet. And so I'm like, that could be it.
So you called me right after you bought the green guitar, and you had played it through a Marshall and Joe Ely's band, and you called me and said, it sounds like a really thick telly with more balls.
I think I told you that at the guitar show, because we had not met.
Yeah.
I think I told you at the guitar show.
Yeah.
But that was kind of that was where I was coming from with it. There was a guy in Austin named Danny Thorpe who did the first guitar show with Charlie Wurst back in the day, and he's the guy that told me that my Fiesta Red Strat had a little darker red underneath it, and I'm thinking, man, maybe it's been refinished. He goes, no, man, that's Dakota. They sprayed it over it. He knew everything, and he got me into old Marshalls, and I finally got a great vintage Marshall that got stolen right away in San Francisco, but he helped me get another one. You could put it on account. I had an account at Ray Hennig's Heart of Texas Music, and anything. Just put it on your account. Cool. Walk out with it. So yeah, playing with Ely, obviously that if you know his music at all, it runs the gamut of like these ballads to this hyper balls to the wall. The Clash loved him rock and roll, and there was the previous band had a pedal steel player named Lloyd Maines, who's one of my closest friends now, and one of the best musicians and producers I know, who played pedal steel through a distortion pedal, and I was very influenced by that. And a lot of the pedal steel stuff I do through taking it and playing it through the Marshall as opposed to the telly through a deluxe reverb. I'm like, man, I'm copping that. So really, the Seafoam green, the all mahogany guitar with a pretty hot pickup in it, not tons of low end, but a great top end through the Marshall. It was like a telly on steroids, and it was the perfect guitar and amp setup. And with Ely, who also gave me tons of room to do my thing and to develop, encouraged me, do your thing. And I learned. I became a musician in that band with that guitar.
So I want to just make a couple observations about this. By the way, this DG Custom, you're using these now.
Well, I've been using them since the day they were born.
Okay, good.
I
just as a point.
I helped hatch this thing from the ground up.
I've never heard anybody say, I'm disappointed with my DGT, I've sold it. I never heard it. I've heard other things, there's a big eBay with PRS guitars, and just as there is with all other brands, but I never heard that. There was a cover on Guitarist Magazine, which is the English magazine, said DGT released best PRS ever, which I thought was cool. The thing that happens is this market gets bored, but this is just a really, really good tool to play music on. And once people have them, they don't let them go. They just don't let them go. And that you should be proud of. I think that's really cool. That you're insistent that it works really well for you translates in that it works really well for other musicians, which I really like. The quote I always liked was Brent Mason. I said, "Why do you like your DGT?" He goes, "I don't know, it just works for me." And I thought that was a very sophisticated comment. He didn't analyze it. It just worked for him.
Man, I love vintage guitars. I've cherry-picked vintage guitars over the years. I owned a Burst at one point. I sold it 5 years too early. I could have put another zero on the end of it. But every time I take an old guitar out, my 335 is really special, but man, it's a little bit like, there's a mild Burl Ives factor, when I'm playing the 335. It's just, for me, it's just a little big in my hands. But that guitar, I could live with that guitar. But when I take other guitars out, man, I'm always like, where's my guitar?
Yeah.
And it just works. If we ever break up, I'm going to have a hard time. I don't know what I'm going to do. If you and I, if we ever break up, I don't know where I'm going to go.
I don't even know what that means. Look, I asked you for the job to be your guitar maker. I did ask for the job.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Here's the other thing you don't know. Maybe you do know. I never gave guitars away. So when I met you, Bugs Henderson had just gotten the red guitar. I'd never given a guitar away. But if I wanted to get into that vintage market, he was the guy doing that. And when you got that guitar, that was really early on. It had just the beginnings of starting. I think Carlos Santana at the time had paid for all the guitars that he had, but this was new. I'd started a company, and I was like, if you want this guy to be playing the guitars, you need to take care of him, Paul, which was what was going on in my head, Anyway, if you haven't had a chance to get your hands on a DGT, if you haven't gotten a chance to hear one, you should try it. Can you play for everybody for a minute, and then we'll end this thing? Nice stories, David. Thank you for coming.
Sure. I'm going to
just have at
turn it all the way.
Sure, why not?